And with that, we should move on to the third of the storytellers they brought to us. You ready for the third story?
Our third storyteller is going to be Robin Cunningham, who is a retired corporate executive and entrepreneur, as well as a mental illness advocate. He recently co-founded the Cure Alliance for Mental Illness. Please welcome Robin.
Very hard even for me to figure out who the old fart girl was. If you find me starting to mumble or looking at my notes frequently or wandering off, it's not mental illness, it's just a senility. So head me back in the right direction.
Bring out a little color in his face.
At 3:30 p.m. On the second Sunday in April of 1956, Satan spoke to me for the first time. I had been told all my life that Satan was out to get me. I was terrified. I was afraid I was about to become the latest battleground in the war between good and evil in the cosmos. I was afraid to tell my parents, but when I did, I got a very strange reaction. My mother said, "No, Robin, it's not Satan." And I said, "What? It's not Satan?" And she said, "No, it's the family curse." I said, "What family curse?" And she said, "Well, you have schizophrenia, you're mentally ill. We've been praying that you wouldn't get it, but apparently you have." Following that, the revelations began to come out. And my grandfather had hanged himself in a state mental institution with a shirt lace when my father was about 12. My father's younger sister tried to drown their 3 children and ended up in the state hospital. My father's older brother was already there. They both received prefrontal lobotomies, which virtually destroyed the remainders of their life, what little was left. My mother tells me that my father woke up every morning or went to bed every night afraid he'd wake up with this dreaded illness. Of course, our congregation was convinced that I was possessed and acted and recorded it. I was pretty much ostracized. So I decided to focus on the war that was raging within me. And within 3 days, I was totally dysfunctional. I couldn't do anything. I mean anything. I couldn't go to school. I just couldn't do anything. It's my sin. I'll keep that in mind. I got all the usual positive symptoms of schizophrenia almost right away. I had audio hallucinations, visual hallucinations, thought insertions, all sorts of terrible anxiety. I had delusions of grandeur and obviously delusions of paranoia. But I went ahead anyway. I really had no choice but to proceed. The war that I was carrying on within me had rules. They started out simple and ended up being more complicated. I couldn't step on cracks. Never mind that our high school had hardwood floors. That brought on lots of abuse. It wasn't a happy time for me. I had to, every time I took a right step with my right foot, I had to take one with my left. It had to be the same. If I stepped on a crag, or a forward, I had to tap my right foot behind me, then my left foot behind me twice, and then my right foot behind me again. It was all about maintaining balance in the cosmos. And I knew that if I failed in my efforts to maintain that balance, that the universe would come to an end. God had given me this special assignment to save the universe, and I took it very seriously. He communicated with me through riddles and signs, which were designed to disguise our conversations from Satan. My parents, on the other hand, took me to see a psychiatrist 3 days after I got sick. I didn't want to go. I said I wouldn't go. I didn't think there was anything he could do to help me. I had a spiritual problem, not a psychological problem. I didn't want to be mentally ill. After discovering what happened to my family, I thought I would rather fight Satan. But I thought I might have better odds. My psychiatrist, believe it or not, convinced me to take Satan, or to take the mental illness on instead, because he was the only one of all the people that had come and talked to me about my problem that did not insist that I first admit I was mentally ill. We just agreed I had a problem. We didn't really give a damn what we called it, but we were out to solve it. So that was critical. We tried every new. He started. I think within 3 days he put me on medication. The only medication available at that time. It didn't work very well for me, but he believed in the medical model of mental illness. And while the psychiatrists in this country were running around trying to find out why mothers made their children psychotic, he was looking for a medical solution. So we started a search which lasted 11 years to find medication that worked for me. He also started giving me therapy. Not talk therapy like psychoanalysis, but dealing with practical problems of living. In giving me the medication when he did, he was 20 or 30 years ahead of his time. The therapy he gave me when you look back on it from today's perspective, can only be described as cognitive behavioral therapy. That was not developed as a treatment modality for at least another 20 or 30 years. So willy-nilly, out of all the people in this entire country, I got a psychiatrist that was 30 years ahead of his time. That treatment thing of early intervention, medications, and cognitive behavioral therapy is now generally called best practice treatment. As far as I know, I don't know of anybody else that got started with this 60 years ago. So I have the distinction of maybe being the oldest one to have gone through this form of treatment for the entire history of my illness, basically most of my life. So I remained actively psychotic through high school and in college. But I had learned to cope. My doctor taught me to cope. At the university, I majored in science. I wanted to know what was happening to me and why. I wanted to understand it, so I majored in science. I accepted an NIH fellowship to study for my PhD in psychology at the University of North Carolina. And much to my dismay, when I got there, I discovered there was nothing scientific about psychology in the 1960s. To put it less than kindly, they were a bunch of sophists. And there was no science involved, and I resigned the fellowship within the first year. I went back to Seattle, and I worked as a lab technician in the virus lab for a while. I also I did some scuba diving for a professor from the University of Tokyo in the Department of Oceanography. Settled in, and then I met my wife, or my future wife, and decided that I couldn't support her on $450 a month. So I had to do something, so I went back and got my MBA, which I swore I would never do. It turned out for me in the end that it was a very smart decision. In my business career, I've served as a senior executive officer, senior corporate executive officer with a number of international corporations, major corporations. I've also been involved in the formation of foreign ventures. I've worked in a lot of different industries and had a lot of different functions. I've been managing director, chairman of the board, and CEO, president, chief operating officer, executive vice president, and vice president of, finance, marketing, sales, strategic strategic planning, and a couple of other things. I always got the problems that nobody else could solve, no matter what my assignment was. And I got the reputation for thinking outside the box, which I thought was rather bad. I retired at age 45. And I spent several years thereafter helping friends along with their business projects. And then I took a ill-fated attempt at writing a trilogy of novels. Gave up on that and got involved in advocating for the Littlefield. And I've been doing that for about the last 10 years. I've given a lot of speeches, and you might not believe that from this speech, but I've given a lot of speeches. I've given a lot of interviews. I wrote over 100 blogs for Schizophrenia Connection, and have appeared in a number of documentaries along the way. I'm on the board I'm on the Leadership Governor's Council on Mental Health Students, on the Greater Trenton Behavioral Health Care Board, and on the Board of Non-University. Mental illness is far more pervasive and far more destructive than almost anybody realizes. Far more people suffer from these illnesses than most people have a clue. And for the first time in the history of dealing with these illnesses, we are at the verge of a new paradigm. Recent developments in research tools, functional MRIs, genetics and whatnot, give us the prospect of finally beginning to figure out what causes these illnesses and what to do about them. So I think my proudest accomplishment so far is I joined with Cunningham, and we formed a new advocacy organization, and we are advocating for increased funding for the National Institute of Mental Health for research into these promising research areas. I never want to hear us say this. I'm actually afraid of stopping my neuroleptic because I'm afraid that I will. I don't want his advice on how to live my life. Didn't work out very well the first time. He lost them. The life expectancy of someone with schizophrenia is about 25 years less than the average citizen. I've also had lots of major illnesses, Crohn's and all sorts of things that have given me significant health problems all my life. I'm now 72, and I think I can say all along in summary that my doctors and I have done very well against the odds. So thank you for listening to my story.
Robin Cunningham, everybody.